The concept of leaderboards is to aggregate every person in a given game, sport, etc., judge them based off their overall performance, and attribute a rank to them where they will be put onto a leaderboard system. A decent amount of rhythm games simply just have rankings for individual songs, or they're done via community interaction, which virtually has no flaws for the most part. Where things get a bit complex, however, is when performance point systems are implemented alongside, where the game tries to attribute a number that's representative of your current skill. These numbers stem from a difficulty algorithm that tries to assess how impressive each individual score is. This is where the focal point of the video will be, and we'll touch on 3 primary topics: what performance point systems accomplish well, what they don't do well, and lastly, the culture that surrounds these types of leaderboards in general. This video is mainly going to target Osu since it's the biggest game and has the most examples, but we will also utilize games like Eterna and a couple others to further exemplify. Performance point systems are extremely marketable and keeps players more in touch with the game too, as they do a generally okay job at keeping track of your relative skill. Even a game as underground as Eterna has seen so much more activity than a few years ago, since you have a way to keep track of your relative skill thanks to MSD, also known as Mina Standardized Difficulty. Osu also thrives on this with the PP system, and it keeps new players in tune with the game much easier since it feels like they're constantly improving and they can compare themselves to their friends. Players enjoy the feeling of being consistently rewarded for their efforts, so it's no surprise that it is a driving force for a lot of players. Viewership is another result of marketability that has spectators fawning over who the best players are in the world, country, or even state at times. If a person has the most points on the leaderboards, combined with them being a decent personality, this helps bring the game to a wider audience since it's very easy to find said person on the leaderboards, combined with the audience retention of the player at hand. Overall, performance point systems for the most part can really increase the longevity of the game, and when they work within reason, they're relatively harmless. It should be worth noting that it is simply not easy at all to make a difficulty algorithm that could spit out numbers that will positively correlate with your actual skill on a very consistent basis. In order to create such a thing, one must have a great understanding of the game in virtually every possible facet, and even then the results are normally less than favorable. Questions like what patterns are harder than others, how manipulated can those patterns be, how much harder is something when there's a 5-second break compared to a 15-second break. These are just a few factors that can easily skew a difficulty algorithm and make it incredibly difficult to reward players for their true skill, which is why performance point systems should never be taken too seriously. Most top players are aware of this and farm rankings for the hell of it, but I would argue quite a bit of lesser experienced players are not aware of this fact and can get overly flustered over a system that doesn't even do its job entirely well. To be fair, these systems are never and will never be perfect, but this doesn't mean that they shouldn't keep being worked on. With that said, these PP systems are very susceptible to manipulation. Osu's PP system, for example, makes zero sense conceptually, and I'm not even talking about from a difficulty algorithm perspective. Osu does not categorize skill sets at all in their games, as you can simply farm your way to certain rankings through 1 or 2 skill sets only, alongside farming specific maps that will inflate your rankings. This isn't to say these players are one-dimensional at all that are doing this, but this allows them to farm a select few skill sets and maps to put themselves higher up on the leaderboards this way, which makes these performance point systems extremely misleading overall. Eterna faces a slightly different case, as its philosophy is centered around ranking everything, so players will find files that have certain patterns that the calculator drastically overinflates. Someone may make the case that if everyone can farm the same maps, isn't the playing field equal? In a way, yes, but like we said before, these games have a clear bias towards certain skill sets and can be reflected through the likes of certain top plays showing up consistently among players. Lots of top players excel in different skill sets that are simply not as rewarded, and for one to assume that all of these players are competing on the same level as a result is just asinine to assume. Some skill sets are simply more overrated or underrated than others, and a PP system like Osu's would be much more balanced if there was a way to aggregate and average PP scores based off of a multitude of skill sets like Eterna does. Lastly, accuracy scores are virtually nullified as a result too. Yes, accuracy does increase the amount of points you can get from a score, but the type of accuracy I'm referring to is much more strict. Now, I am not saying that there will ever be a proper solution to fusing pure accuracy with fast material for rankings. I'm just simply stating that players that are more accuracy oriented in rhythm games, whether it's getting double S's with very low unstable rate in the Osu games, or something like Quaddies and Eterna, are completely nullified as a result of how current PP systems function. It's just a reality that will probably stay as such, and most people generally don't mind that fact, including myself. But it does make overall leaderboards much more misleading as a result. As we've stated before, PP systems can make it very easy for spectators to follow and play the game. It also helps them find players that will in turn keep them engaged with the community more. We also noted, however, that these leaderboards can be incredibly misleading and manipulated, and since spectators can get so attached to top-level leaderboard competition, combined with them not having too much knowledge about the game, it can end up creating a pretty unfavorable environment for all parties involved. If a person is close to a certain type of ranking or a rank was taken from someone, communities can create tons of unrelenting and unnecessary pressure for that player to take their spot back in a system that's not even remotely optimized and frankly means so much less than it seems on the surface. I'm not saying players don't farm rankings for fun at all, nor am I saying there's anything wrong with that. But casual viewers tend to take PP rankings a bit too seriously and operate these principles towards a lot more players than they should. People fawning over leaderboards also tends to lead spectators to a false sense of what skill means and diminishes the notion of being a well-rounded player. Given Osu doesn't even remotely reward something like fast technicality and tends to on average undermine almost everything that isn't hidden double time material, casual spectators or inexperienced players will just gravitate towards the leaderboards to see who the best players are and what types of songs they should play if they want to go up in the leaderboards too. This is not the fault of the players at all, but rather as a result of the leaderboards and PP systems. If your performance point system favors a certain skill set far too heavily, it leads other players to believe that they need to emulate those top players in order to succeed. It just creates a culture where everyone needs to play fast and disregard most fundamentals. But thankfully some players down the line are at least able to erase this mindset almost entirely. Now it may seem like after all of that, I would be against performance point systems, but it's actually the complete opposite. Overall, I think performance point systems are a net positive for the games it's implemented in. Sure, it comes with a set of flaws, but as long as they're being continually worked on and people don't take them too seriously, those principles alone can go very far. I hope the games that do have it will continually try to come up with ways to improve it, and I highly encourage those people to provide more transparency and updates if you are working on said system. I think the biggest takeaway I want people to have is that PP systems are not as representative of a player's skill anywhere near as much as the average spectator thinks. I hope this video will reach those people that have this mentality, as while it can certainly be very enticing to watch a player farm to a certain ranking, or farm those rankings yourself, it should not be something to continually push onto a certain player or take too seriously towards your own scores. Thank you to all my patrons for supporting the channel, and if you would like to support the channel for more rhythm gaming content like this, go ahead and check out my Patreon, drop a sub if you're new here, and check out my other links below. I'll see you all in whatever video I upload next, and take care.